So I don't think anybody could have predicted it like this. But the Eastern Conference Finals matchup right now are the Atlanta Hawks and the Milwaukee Bucks. Game one is going on right now. How do you guys think this series is going to pan out?
Well, first things first, I do want to point out I kind of predicted this a little bit. I personally said I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks would actually beat the Brooklyn Nets. I didn't anticipate the Brooklyn Nets to get this injured, and I also said I'd have the Hawks winning in six. Turns out the 76ers did better than I thought. But regardless, this series right here is it's going to be a very good series in my opinion. There's going to be a lot of people out here saying that the Bucks are probably going to take this running away. I personally have the Hawks in six. Here's one of the biggest catalysts for me while I was watching a game in regards to the Bucks or the series regarding the Bucks versus the Brooklyn Nets, one thing became very clear to me: the Bucks weren't who I thought they were. In that particular series, once James Harden was extremely hobbled and the Kyrie Irving went down, I personally thought that the Milwaukee Bucks that I grew to know and love, the Milwaukee Bucks that I seen that blew out my Miami Heat, the Brent Fords that I seen average about 25 points per game, after he reverted and the Bucks reverted, they barely snuck out of that series by the toenail of Kevin Durant. Let me tell you right now, that Brooklyn Nets team was atrocious. After Kevin Durant, Joe Harris looked like he never shot a basketball in his life before. He pretty much went like 20 something percent from the 3 point line, completely forgot how to shoot, essentially reverted to pandemic P, or excuse me, pandemic J at this particular point. I thought it was bad for the Milwaukee Bucks to barely eke out of that series. Told me that they weren't who I thought they were. The Atlanta Hawks, they're pretty much peaking at this particular point. They were doing absolutely phenomenal in the series versus the Philadelphia 76ers. They pretty much I'm not necessarily going to say shut Ben Simmons down, man, because Ben Simmons did that to himself. But I personally believe they had a very good game plan against Ben Simmons, which made him just go into a bad place. I personally believe that they could potentially do a version of that against Giannis Antetokounmpo. If he actually starts to go off, game one he goes off, game two he starts to go off, they might start doing that hack of Giannis. I'm not necessarily saying that he's going to be as bad of a shooter as Ben Simmons. I personally believe that he's probably going to be around like 50%, even if they're lucky, probably 40%. I think that right there could definitely take the Bucks out of their rhythm. And once some of their shooters aren't necessarily in the best rhythm, they're probably going to fold. Some of the players on Milwaukee that was looking very funny in light was Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. On the road, Chris Middleton was absolutely atrocious. At home, he was essentially Michael Jordan 2.0. With Drew Holiday, he was about like 3 for 17 in game seven. He was looking extremely funny in light. And throughout the whole series, he shot about 30 something percent from the field. I personally believe that they're a very shaky team. I'm gonna have to say I have the Hawks in six. I think Trae Young can get it done.
I look at both of these teams on paper. I think that the Bucks should come out of the series. However, I think that really depends on Chris Middleton. I mean, you have a guy like Drew Holiday who's going to do what he can against Trae Young. You know, he's known as one of the better defenders in the league. But at the end of the day, the thing about the Hawks is they don't go as Trae Young goes, because guys like Kevin Herter can heat up, guys like Bogdanovich can heat up, and the Hawks can make it a pretty hard night for you. Giannis is going to get his, we know that, but again, like I said, it comes down to Chris Middleton. You know, one game he'll give you 30, which is usually at home, and then a game he'll give you 3, and that's usually an away game. And you gotta win away if you're gonna come out of a series, man. So that being said, man, I really gotta go with Milwaukee. I'm taking a little risk because, like you said, they're shaky water, but I'm going with Milwaukee, and I actually think it'll go 7.
I'm gonna be the first to say I really underestimated the Atlanta Hawks against the Sixers. I had the Sixers winning in 4, if not 5. And I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna say that the Milwaukee Bucks have no business losing to the Atlanta Hawks. I'm gonna double down. I don't believe the Atlanta Hawks have what it takes to make the NBA Finals this year. Now, I place that all on the shoulders of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, I do think he's quite overrated. I think he's a bit overrated, but there's no reason he should be losing to these people. He is a 2-time MVP, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He needs to, if he ever had a shot at winning or making it, let alone winning, if he had a shot at making it to the NBA Finals, it is now. And if he blows it, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. But that's a conversation for another day. You guys stay tuned for that video. But I just don't feel that the Atlanta Hawks are going to have what it takes to match the firepower of the Milwaukee Bucks. But I'm sure Rob is going to tell me otherwise.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, when it comes to matching the firepower of the Milwaukee Bucks, I don't necessarily think that's going to be much of a big deal, mainly because they was playing Brooklyn Nets, arguably the worst defensive team in the league, without Kyrie Irving and a hobbled James Harden, I should point out, and they were struggling. They were barely scoring above 105 points a game. That right there is a problem. And now you go into a series where a team is actually good on the defensive side of the ball. I personally believe that right there is going to present a lot of struggles for the Milwaukee Bucks. It might not be in game one, but I'm pretty sure after they get that momentum, after that momentum from the first game fades a little bit, after you feel me, Nate McMillan starts to make some adjustments, I personally believe that's when you start to see the Milwaukee Bucks fold a little bit. Drew Holiday, I don't know. Again, this right here was one of the more perplexing players that I see in the last series. He had Joe Harris and James Harden on one leg, and he barely shot over 30% from the field. Like, what if, before I go off any further, that's just my point. I personally believe that the Hawks could definitely stifle not Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think Giannis could get whatever he wants unless they do start the hack of Giannis. But I personally believe everybody else, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brooke Lopez, I personally believe that they'll look funny in the light. And I don't necessarily think that they'll be able to match the scoring output that Trae Young, Kevin Hurt, and everybody else is going to be able to put up.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, I heard one of you guys mention like Milwaukee having firepower. Nah, the Atlanta Hawks have a lot of firepower, and I think people don't talk enough about how they still have Lou Will coming off the bench who can also heat up. Like they just have in Gallinari. I mean, they have scorers up left and right. They have scorers. So that's the thing about the Hawks, and that's what makes Milwaukee such a shaky pick. Even though I'm going with them because they have the best player of the series, I think that you know guys like Gallinari and Kevin Herter and Bogdanovich, they've been looking very consistent. That's more than I can say for a guy like Chris Middleton. But Chris Middleton is your max player, so I mean, well, I think it'll come down to coaching as well because you're definitely going to have to switch up the strategy because, like Rob said, you know, Milwaukee barely made it past the Brooklyn Nets. You know, if Kevin Durant was a half-foot size smaller, we're having a completely different conversation right now. So I definitely don't think that they could get into some type of hole. They have to get up while they're ahead and get up early against the Hawks, and then don't look back.